There's a move in Super Smash Bros. Melee called the knee, or the knee of justice if you're a real ass motherfucker.
Oh, what? Oh, Lord! What the crap?
It's Captain Falcon's forward air. If you land it clean on one of the correct frames in just the right spot, the game freezes, just for a tiny second. Both characters lock in place, there's a flash of electricity, and then your opponent flies off like they were shot out of a cannon. Every Melee player knows this feeling. You don't just see moves like these connect, you feel them.
Show me a move.
Through the screen, through the controller, maybe through whatever part of your brain is responsible for making you involuntarily scream "oh" out loud at 2 in the morning when nobody else is awake, or when you're hitting 2 quick ones because I already know I'm getting there on the perfect line. But I've always wondered why. What is it about these specific interactions that feel so satisfying, maybe more satisfying than anything else in any other video game? Because I don't think the answer is just nostalgia. People who pick up Melee for the first time, perhaps some of you watching these videos, will probably have the same reaction to hitting a nasty combo or sliding around the platforms like Alyssa freaking Liu. The knee hits different and Melee combos hit different. So I did what I always do when I have a burning question on the back of my mind for months to years at this point. I pretended my master's degree in engineering actually meant something, that I'm not in a crippling amount of debt, and I sat my ass down and learned some stuff. And it turns out the answer is a lot more interesting than I expected, because it's not just game design, it's actually neuroscience. Your brain is doing something very specific when a combo connects, and Melee's engine is accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally, engineered to trigger it. So here we go. Enjoy a college lecture literally none of you asked for from your favorite green screen YouTuber microphone guy about why hitting moves in Smash feels sick. What do I call this? Smash 101? Smashing Bros 101? Me smashing my Bros 101? God fuck! Thank you to VITURE, who is paid to be mentioned in today's video. So VITURE just sent me their Pro 2 XR glasses, and these things are honestly sick. Everything I do for work involves a screen, whether it's making videos or watching videos or playing video games or just aimlessly scrolling on Instagram Reels until the cruel unending march of time comes for me. The VITURE Pro 2 moves all of that onto a giant virtual screen. It connects USB-C to C so I can watch videos on my phone or plug in my Steam Deck for a private gaming session. What's more, it only weighs 63 grams and they are genuinely very comfortable. The Pro 2s are 20% lighter and 16% thinner than the last model, and the display really does hold up nicely. These project a Sony Micro OLED screen with sharp colors and great brightness, and it even has you covered if you need a prescription too, with a separate diopter dial built into the frame to adjust for your eyesight. The glasses also boast some sweet directional sound on the arms of the frame, so no headphones required. They also have the Mobile Dock Mini, a 10,000 milliamp hours power bank that magnetically snaps onto your Switch or Switch 2, while also supporting most USB-C devices. I'm honestly really excited to be partnering with VITURE. These glasses are absolutely dope, and I am super excited to have them packed up for my next big trips. Both the Pro 2 XR glasses and the Mobile Dock Mini are available now as a part of VITURE's 5th anniversary collection, so if you're interested, you can check out my link in the description or use discount code WALT to get a little bit off. Also, I'm reading my teleprompter like this because the screen's here. Thanks again to VITURE for supporting the channel, and I hope you enjoy today's video. All right, so let's go back to the knee, or more specifically, when you hit it and the game pauses. This phenomena is called hit lag, or hit stop, or hit freeze, or according to the wiki, hit stun, which is literally wrong, but I'll get to that later. But pretty much every fighting game does some version of this. Melee's implementation of this mechanic is specific, and Sakurai wrote a whole column in Famitsu about it. Turns out he explicitly designed it as a tool to emphasize impact, as they're literally frozen frames added into the game. For the nerds in the chat, this is the formula Melee uses. You take the damage of the move, divide by 3, and then add 3 afterwards. The resultant number is your hit lag in frames, and Melee operates at 60 frames per second, so you can do some more math to figure out how long the freeze will be happening. But if the move has the electric property, like the knee does, you multiply that result by 1.5. Also, kinda suspicious that when you crouch cancel, you multiply the result by 0.67? Real shit, Sakurai? Alright, I see you. But the reason this matters should hopefully be obvious. If you don't pause the game on an impact, the hit probably doesn't feel like an impact. It just feels like characters doing stuff in parallel. Your brain, for all of its wonderful wrinkles, is kinda stupid. It needs time to register that something has happened. This is why impact frames in shows like One Piece, despite the anime having the most hilarious pacing of all time, are so sick. Without hit lag, a big cinematic punch doesn't really read all that well. And with it, even a weak hit will read as contact. Funnily enough, you'd think that Melee is like this proud gold standard for Hitlag because each hit feels so meaty and like full of meat, but it turns out Melee actually has the lowest amount of hit lag across any Smash title. Here's some more math, but a move that deals 15% in damage would inflict roughly 8 frames of hit lag in Melee. In Smash 64, Brawl, and Smaforsh, it's 10 frames, and in Smash Ultimate, it is almost double at 15 frames of hit lag. Based on everything I just told you, it sounds like Melee's hits should feel less impactful because of this, because you're freezing for a smaller amount of time, but it's actually the opposite. The shorter hit lag afforded by Melee's engine means you spend less time frozen in the animation of receiving a blow. In turn, the amount of frames, or the time between one hit in a combo and the next, is also shorter, which makes the real nerd stuff I'm about to get into next connect much more smoothly. Melee combos don't just feel fast, they literally are fast, and we can prove that with math. Whew, okay, here we go. So, in 1997, a neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz published a paper that basically changed how we understand the brain's reward system. The paper was called A Neural Substrate of Prediction and Reward, and the idea kind of went something like this. Your brain is not necessarily a reward detector, but rather a prediction machine. Schultz studied dopamine neurons in monkeys, and the common knowledge at the time was that dopamine was a pleasure chemical. So get something good, feel something good. What Schultz found aligned to this: when a monkey received an unexpected reward, in this case a sip of juice, its dopamine fired on all cylinders. But Schultz added another variable. Before the juice would arrive, a light would turn on. Once the monkey learned the pattern, the dopamine response shifted. It no longer fired at the presentation of the juice, but rather the light, or the prediction itself. When the juice actually arrived, it was actually a flat line. Schultz noted that the only time dopamine would fire even bigger was when the reality was even better than the prediction, and he called this the reward prediction error. Like super big psychology nerds in the chat will probably go a century further back to Ivan Pavlov's Pavlov effect, or the classical conditioning effect where he trained dogs to salivate at the sound of a bell by linking two actions together, but these both kind of describe the same fundamental process of associative learning. Now let's think about what's happening in your brain when you watch or execute a Melee combo. The first hit connects, okay, cool, small dopamine bump, but now your opponent is in Hitstun and you have time to follow up. Your brain makes a prediction that the combo might continue. If the next hit lands, that's in a way a positive prediction error because the outcome was better than the uncertain prediction, another dopamine bump. If the reality matches your prediction exactly, you may eventually get bored, so your dopamine as it pertains to this reward loop in Melee depends on one's reaction to uncertainty. Outcomes, to some extent, have to be variable, and in Melee they are because of one specific mechanic, Directional Influence, or DI.
What? Wait, no fucking way.
When you get hit in Melee, you can hold a direction on your control stick to shift your launch angle. Your opponent is actively trying to escape your combo, and you're actively adjusting to hit the combo. What this means is that no two combos are ever exactly the same, even if the moves conducted are completely identical, because the players, stage, and defensive options can vary. So like very super generally speaking, the deeper you get into a combo, the higher the likelihood an opponent can escape it, either by dying, which hooray, maximum dopamine, or by virtue of your opponent having more defensive options to pull away from an untrue combo. This is what makes the percent system as a damage meter so interesting to me, by the way, since the higher percent you are, the less likely you are able to be able to string hits together. A KO to jab at 999% is deeply unsatisfying. Like that's weird feeling, but I mean, it's funny, like it's pretty funny. But once the concepts you learn in Melee become carved into your neural pathways, you understand this combo risk-reward chain pretty intimately. And I would say this is scientifically why the last hit of a combo generally feels the best. It's not because it may do the most damage or because it earns you the stock, although those certainly help. It's because at that point, your brain has created the expectation and the continued success of the string keeps exceeding it. By this logic, a combo is a chain of escalating positive prediction errors. Okay, so now in 1990, a psychologist named Mihaly, I'm not even gonna try on this one. That is a crazy amount of consonants. But he published a book called Flow: The Psychology of Optimal Experience. You've probably heard of flow state before, but it's the condition where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time simply seems to melt away. Athletes in real sports, or that one basketball anime, call it the zone, and you lose track of everything except the task in front of you. What's that weird thing they're doing with their tongue? What? Anyway, the big insight from Mr. Many Letters in his last name was that flow doesn't just happen randomly. It has prerequisites, and you can actually control it. You need clear goals, immediate feedback, and most importantly, a balance between the difficulty of the task and your skill level at the task. If it's too easy, you'll get bored, too hard, and you'll get anxious. A guy named Genova Chen, who went on to create the game's flow and journey, literally wrote his MFA thesis on applying that guy's theory to game design. His argument was that the best games were the ones that dynamically kept you in flow state. Melee does this, kind of by accident. The execution barrier is so stupidly high that at the game's top level, it is literally impossible to autopilot. Things like L canceling, movement tech, and watching an opponent do all of the same shit are execution barriers that demand your full attention. But Melee also famously does not have an input buffer, so the feedback is close to instant. You press a button and something will happen. If you miss your window, you get nothing. The gap between action and feedback here is basically zero. Those defensive concepts I just mentioned, like DI, crouch canceling, and the fact that the person you're playing against is also another human with their own independent thoughts, means the execution of a combo is not often a memorized sequence. Sure, you have flowcharts and true combos that are rehearsed, but those are all based on what your opponent gives to you. At its core, you're improvising, reading your opponent, and adjusting your timing or mechanics in real time. Precise inputs produce precise responses, and that tight loop is what makes a successful sequence feel like an extension of your hands rather than a suggestion you made to the game. The combo didn't just happen, you are the one doing it, and your brain can tell the difference. This is an aspect of many fighting games that make them so fun to play, but it's also the skill challenge balance that Mr. Many Letters was talking about. This shit is hard, but it is so satisfying, so the flow state is earned. In 1998, a team at Hammersmith Hospital in London actually proved this was more than just a feeling, like that Boston song. They put people in PET scanners, like the big medical imaging machines, and had them play a video game. And they found that gameplay produced measurable dopamine release in the striatum. The better the player performed, the more dopamine was released. This was the first time anyone had directly measured dopamine release during gameplay in humans. Playing a video game produces the same neurochemical response as other rewarding activities, and it scales with your skill. Also worth mentioning, I performed a similar study when I was an undergrad too, so I'm something of a scientist myself, but I was testing if hand-eye coordination could be trained via a fun thing called transcranial direct current stimulation. But that was more of an excuse to let me electrocute my friends for fun, so, results are still pending there. Here's a fun transition, gambling. Slot machines are fun because the lights are cool and casinos are psychologically engineered to make you feel like you're in a fabricated flow state, but the outcomes are actually binary. Either you win or you don't. This is called a variable reward schedule, originally documented by B.F. Skinner. Animals and people work harder for unpredictable rewards than they do for predictable ones. The unpredictability is the addiction, and yes, I can quit anytime I want. Melee combos, and technically every fighting game combo, are also a variable reward schedule. The difference here is in how much room the schedule has to operate. A game with no defensive options produces less variance. Also, I feel like I should clarify this is in no way me encouraging you to gamble. I guess I just felt like I should say that because influencers and the responsibility they carry to their audiences, I guess, but I don't know, just be responsible with whatever you choose to do. For the last piece of the puzzle, your brain doesn't just need to predict and receive rewards, it needs to believe the reward actually happened. When you land a juicy hit in Melee, three things happen simultaneously. 1, you see the impact frames, in this case hit lag. 2, you hear the hit sound effect. And 3, you feel the input on the controller. Either a rumble if you have that turned on, or just the physical reward of pressing a button and getting an immediate response. Visual, auditory, and haptic feedback are happening all at once. When all three of these sensory channels agree that yes, this hit connected, your brain registers maximum confidence in the event. The impact feels like an impact, you're getting your dopamine, things feel awesome, and Melee's great.
Bro, what?
If you take away any one of those channels, the hit may feel worse. Try to watch Melee on mute and the combos may feel like off-putting or less satisfying. If you play with input lag or, attempt any Elite Smash match in Ultimate, the tactile channel just completely desyncs and everything sucks and it feels really sluggish. The convergence of these three senses is the key. Okay, so with all of this in mind, I want to go back and talk about Hitstun because it's a huge mechanic that makes any of this science talk kind of relevant in the first place. Not to be confused with hit lag that I mentioned earlier, but Hitstun is the period after getting hit where you can't do anything, which is what enables combos. If your opponent has to spend more time in Hitstun than you have to spend doing your next move, boom, Tetris for Jeff or a true combo. A guaranteed follow-up that the opponent literally cannot escape. In Melee, that calculation is directly tied to knockback at 0.4 frames of hitstun per unit of knockback, which was actually reduced from 64's 0.533x multiplier. This is what made the original Smash feel so touch of death, by the way, with long, high-damage combos being pretty common. Brawl seriously fucked up the vibe by adding a mechanic called Hitstun canceling to the game, which let you air dodge out of Hitstun after just 13 frames. And this single change pretty much single-handedly killed combos in Brawl, and by proxy, the psychological satisfaction you may get from linking hits together. Because the defender could pretty much escape at any point, your dopamine fix instead came from, like, reading an opponent's defensive option. There was just not as much mounting tension, no flow, no swag, no aura, no woman, no cry. It was honestly kind of funny, if I'm being for real with you. On one hand, you had a game that was widely regarded as the gold standard for all things satisfying movement, and on the other, a game that almost comically did not have combos. Also, because I'm the king of playing devil's advocate, I'm sure you can argue Brawl had other strengths. I genuinely enjoyed playing Brawl, but I don't think you can argue that the dopamine loop that was created in Melee exactly matched that of what you got in Brawl. Smash 4 and Ultimate partially restored Hitstun, not all the way, but enough that combos and the semblance of them existed again. And it's not a coincidence that Ultimate's reception in the competitive community has been warmer than Brawl's, even though both games have things people don't love, like this blockhead-looking ass. As a result, I think Hitstun is an extremely load-bearing mechanic. Hollow it out like Brawl did, and the rest of the system simply cannot deliver what your brain wants. So the stuff I mentioned before is in some way agreed upon science. Prediction error, flow state, sensory convergence, variable rewards, spinning the slot machine until you achieve generational wealth. Why doesn't every Smash game feel the same though? They all have similar enough mechanics, and they all do have combos regardless of how slow or fast they may be perceived. The answer, I think, is kind of simple. 1, because they're different games, you dumb idiot, and 2, because they're different games, you dumb idiot. Smash 64 has more Hitstun than Melee, so the combos are longer and arguably easier to execute. That sounds like it should feel better, but for high-level play, the real tension here comes from neutral and who can find the first opening. Brawl, like I just covered, killed Hitstun. The reward chain can't build as a result because there's simply no reward to begin with, and the game feels slow and heavy and sluggish when you fight things out. Smash 4 and Ultimate partially restored that Hitstun, but increased hit lag dramatically, so the individual hits feel heavier and the rate of the reward loop is arguably slower. Ultimate in some ways adjusted for this by adding their special zoom and final zoom screens to really heavily point out when something epic is happening, and those do carry a lot more weight. But Melee, in my opinion, sits at this very specific sweet spot, no pun intended. I literally wrote that in my script also, and I still walked straight into that. That's crazy. But the hit lag is short enough to feel punchy, and the hit stun is long enough to award you with these free-flowing true combos. There's no like Hitstun canceling to act as your thief of joy, the tension built around neutral feels just as earned, and there's some degree of nuance and variance thanks to all of those defensive options I brought up earlier. So, back to the knee. I don't really think Sakurai or anyone at HAL Laboratories sat down in 2001 and said, let's engineer a dopamine delivery system. Sakurai probably wasn't reading prediction error theory, and the team at HAL Labs probably wasn't optimizing for cross-modal sensory convergence. I would guess they were just making a game that probably felt right, like they just wanted to make something that was cool and had Mario and Kirby and Pikachu in it, and they nailed it. But those small, sometimes accidental decisions that felt right turned out to be, in my opinion, a combination that maps almost perfectly onto how the human brain processes reward. I think that's why Melee is such a captivating game to me, not for the insane amount of weird science research I did just to cobble together a video this month, but for the fact that I thought about doing this and I thought it would be cool. So there you have it. I have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the knee is not magic, but neuroscience. But maybe it's a little bit magic too. Also, I hate that I read this many scientific papers to do that. My head hurts. I'm gonna go now. Thanks for watching. Big thank you to my top tier patrons and YouTube members. Check those links out if you feel like supporting the channel and you more importantly have the disposable income to do so. Big thank you to Avishua Stein, Bobby Wasabi, Brent Mukai, Carter Roberts, Kaiden, Dark Genix, Eric is Cool, Gustavo Cantu Fernandez, James Fadman, Justin Duncan Mills, Kyle Carlin, Marshall Bradley, Michael Talamo, Prakar Sinha, Rosewood, and Sam Wright.